Hello everyone, Jules here. Today I'd like to talk about 4 books that have a Jungian approach, and each of the 4 books are different in their own way. The first one is called Awakening the Heroes Within by Pearson. Here is the book. This is a great book about archetypes, and this book is about 12 main archetypes, and it's a really good book of its kind regarding archetypes. This is really a kind of a workbook, so I really like that about this book, because it's not all information or theory about archetypes. It's a workbook as well, so that's really useful. And the subtitle is 12 Archetypes to Help Us Find Ourselves and Transform Our World. And the 12 different archetypes are innocent or the innocent, orphan, warrior, caregiver, seeker, lover, destroyer, creator, ruler, magician, sage, and fool. So, hearing some of the archetypes there, I'm sure a lot of people would probably think of at least 2 or 3 of those being quite compatible or the same as the major arcana of tarot, because the major arcana of tarot is also about archetypes. This book is about different ideas, lots and lots of different approaches to working with archetypes and working with any of those 12 archetypes, or all of them if you wished. And it's all divided into parts. So part 1 is all about the self and the soul, and then part 2 is all about the journey into exploring archetypes. So part 2 is the archetypes themselves, and it's actually divided into another 3 parts, because part 2 is about the first 4 archetypes, and then part 3 is the next 4 archetypes, and then part 4 is the next 4 after that. So, for example, part 2 is preparation for the journey, part 3 is the journey, and then part 4 is the return. And then part 5 is a really interesting inclusion that I think a lot of people will really see quite relevant. It's about honouring diversity, and that is where it is relating to transforming your world, or transforming the world, because honouring diversity, including gender diversity, it's all about from duality to wholeness. There's a chapter here, gender and human development over the lifespan, and then gender diversity and transformation of culture. I think that's really important too, to look at these archetypes also from a cultural perspective. And then the last chapter is claiming your life myth. So this book is just so relevant now. In a lot of ways it was written ahead of its time. Pearson is an archetype expert. she wrote her first book regarding 6 archetypes, and then a number of years later there is this book now with 12 archetypes based on the original Jungian archetype concept. So it's pretty amazing that this one was actually written in 1991, but it's incredibly relevant now. It's still relevant. I think it always will be, but it's especially relevant about the gender diversity and including the cultural perspective. It really is a great book. I think it's a wonderful book. I'm sure this book is still available because it's such a popular book, because it's just so well done, and it's so useful, and it's very fulfilling. It's a great book to work with. So this is Awakening the Heroes Within by Carol Pearson, or Carol S. Pearson. So it's a great book. Just finding space for these books here. Right there. I might move it to the other side. Just a moment. Okay. The next book is called Shadow Dance by David Richo. And the subtitle is Liberating the Power and Creativity of Your Dark Side. This is a great book. There's lots of ideas in this book as well. Lots of ideas for integrating the shadow. And this is from a Jungian perspective as well. A lot of people think that the shadow is about disconnection, or it's about removing the shadow or eradicating the shadow. This is about integrating the shadow. And that was really what the original Jungian concept was about. It was about integrating the shadow. So it's not something to be ashamed of or to remove. It's not about that. It's about to discovering the hidden parts of ourselves, and to learn how to integrate those aspects. So just a quote from the back here to talk about the actual original Jungian concept. It says here, our shadow is the collection of negative or undesirable traits we keep hidden. The things we don't like about ourselves or are afraid to admit. And I think the other thing that's a little bit different here too, it's also saying here that the shadow self is really the hidden self, and sometimes it actually includes untapped potentials or qualities that we may admire in others but deny or disavow in ourselves. So this is about befriending the shadow. There's lots and lots of ideas in this book for how to do that. I think it's a great book for journaling too. I think this is the best book about the shadow from the original Jungian perspective, the original Jungian concept. This is the best book that I have found about the shadow and how to integrate the shadow, with lots of ideas of how to do that. So it's a great book. I'm pretty sure this book is still available. So this is Shadow Dance by David Richo. And even the title of the book, Shadow Dance. So this is about befriending and integrating the shadow. That it is a kind of a dance. So a dance within the self. So Shadow Dance by David Richo. Great book. The next two books are from a Jungian perspective in regard to tarot. So this one is called Discovering Yourself Through the Tarot by Gwain. This book has been around for quite a while. I'm sure it's still in print. And this has got a lot of ideas in here for using the tarot in regard to Jungian concepts and ideas, including the shadow. The shadow, there is a chapter on the shadow in here too. There's spreads in here, but it's all for inner work from a Jungian approach. So the spreads that are in here are not really for divination, they're for the inner work on the self. The subtitle here is A Jungian Guide to Archetypes and Personality. Even the Kabbalah, there is some Kabbalah in here. So here's a diagram of the Kabbalah in here as well. And even this is also sort of to do with the inner self as well, but I suppose I need to point out here that the Jungian approach did not conventionally, it was not the Jungian approach of depth psychology was not originally about Kabbalah, tarot, things like that. But because this is a tarot book with a Jungian approach, it has been included. So I need to mention that. Carl Jung did know about the tarot and Kabbalah, but they weren't really a major interest of his. He also knew about, he was aware of astrology as well. He was more interested in the I Ching and alchemy. But they have been included in this book. And here is the chapter on the shadow. And the spreads, there are spreads, as I said, but they're all for inner work, like the union of opposites, things like that. And there's an inner alchemy spread. And the chakras are mentioned in here too. And the chakras are really not something that are part of the conventional Jungian approach either, but it is in this book. There is a definition for all of the tarot cards from a Jungian perspective. And the other thing that's really interesting with this book is I was just going to say too, I wanted to mention that all of the different traditional Jungian personality functions are also corresponded with the suits. Keeping a tarot journal. There's meanings for all the cards in here. I think there was something else I was going to mention, but I can't quite remember what it is. This Yeah, this was published in 1994, but it is still available. Oh, I know what it is. There's something unusual, something different with this as well. The author has kind of included the idea of an additional suit, which is the suit of spirit. And the author has done that to indicate the need for a suit of spirit for the individuated person. So this is the self-realized person would then be part of the suit of spirit. And the other thing that's in here with the descriptions for some of the cards, especially the court cards, the Yi Jing is mentioned, like there is a Yi Jing correspondence for those particular court cards. So that's there as well. So there's a lot in here as well. It's not all that thick a book, but there is a lot in here, but completely from a Jungian approach. So if for people who would like to work with tarot in a Jungian way, this is very much the book for that. I'm just having a look at the I Ching. I'm pretty sure that it is only for the court cards, from what I can tell here. Yeah, it looks like it's only for the court cards. And the chapter on the Kabbalah, which also includes, like also the chakras here. From a Hermetic Kabbalah or Golden Dawn perspective, it's not quite that. So I don't agree with everything as far as the Kabbalah is concerned, and I can never really see a close match in regards to chakras and Kabbalah. I'd see them as two different systems. So I don't really like that correspondence in the book. But otherwise, from a Jungian perspective in regard to tarot, with that approach, this book is quite good for that. So this is Discovering Yourself Through the Tarot, a Jungian Guide to Archetypes and Personality by Rose Gwain. That's that book. It's quite good. Now, the last book, the fourth book, is also in the same vein as the one I just showed. This is a thick book, and it's got quite a lot in here. This is Tarot and Individuation by Irene Gad, 2004 edition, very thick book. Now, as you can see, this has got Kabbalah, the Serpent of Wisdom here. So the subtitle is A Jungian Study of Correspondences with Kabbalah, Alchemy and the Chakras. Now again, this is a Jungian approach in regard to tarot, but as I was saying, keep in mind that Carl Jung did not really work with Kabbalah and the chakras, but alchemy is very much in this book. So Carl Jung particularly had a particular interest in alchemy. So it's a very thick book. This is the 2004 edition, 450 pages. It's mainly working with the major arcana, or it is working with the major arcana. But keep in mind that the correspondences in here in regard to the major arcana are the French esoteric system, which is not the Golden Dawn English system. So what you would notice with the French esoteric system is in regard particularly not only to do with the ordering or numbering of some of the cards, but to do with the Hebrew letters. The Hebrew letter correspondences are different with the French esoteric system. So this is the French esoteric system, and the author does mention Oswald Wirth, who used the French esoteric system. So just keep that in mind. Of course, anyone who works with or is aware of the Golden Dawn system with the Hebrew letters, I'll be thinking this isn't right. But it's a French esoteric system. So the way this is divided up is it divides the major arcana into different sections or parts. It has part 1 is to do with Kabbalah, and it's spelt with a C, which is the Christian Kabbalah way, but it's spelt with a C, even though this is Hermetic Kabbalah. So this is the Marseille numbering of the cards. So card 8 is Justice and 11 is Strength. So part 1 is to do with Kabbalah. So the cards from 1 to 10 are in regard to Kabbalah. And that is to do with the French esoteric system too. Then part 2 is Alchemy. And that goes from card 11, Strength, to the World. And after the World card, the Fool card 0. That is the French esoteric order, with the Fool card being placed after the World card. So that's part 2 is Tarot and Alchemy. Part 1 is Kabbalah and Tarot. Then part 3 goes into chakras and tarot. Now again, not only did Carl Jung not really have writings on Kabbalah or tarot or chakras, they are in this book. Again, this is the matching up of especially chakras with Kabbalah again. I personally don't do that. So that's part 3. And then there is a few pages on astrology and tarot. Now, don't forget, this is correspondences. In regard to astrology and tarot, it's only about correspondences. That is the only connection that tarot and astrology have together, correspondences. And that's what this book is about. A Jungian study of correspondences. So always remember that. It's more about correspondences, this book. There is a chapter here, and there is a diagram showing the difference here. You've got the Hebrew letters here in this column, and then you've got the difference between the French esoteric system and the English, the names of the cards, and how they match up with the Hebrew letters. So I think a lot of people will find that quite handy. So it's got the French system, which is headed Levi, as in Eliphas Levi, Papus and Wirth. And then the column for the Golden Dawn is headed Weight. So that can be useful for people. There's lots of spreads in the back of the book. The last chapter is spreads, but these are not really divination again. These are all inner work spreads, but there's about 70 pages of spreads. They start from simple layouts, And then as you go further into the chapter, these spreads get larger and more complex. So it's quite a unique book. It is a unique book. It's a very unique book. But you just need to remember that it is correspondences, and it is mainly using the French esoteric system. So I need to point that out to people. And I also need to point out that this is not conventional Jungian psychology either, because Carl Jung didn't particularly work with Kabbalah or tarot or chakras. But I think what I like best about this book, there's some other, I'm just looking at some other diagrams that are in the back of the book again, about, it's really about different correspondences, but I do like the information about the, part 2, which is tarot and alchemy. I really do like that. So, Tarot and Individuation by Irene Gad, a Jungian study of correspondences, 2004 edition. I think this makes a great reference book. I use this more as a reference book. It's certainly not a book that you could read cover to cover. You could do that with the previous book that I just showed, Discovering Yourself Through the Tarot, because that one is almost like a workbook too. You could work through that book. This one is more of a reference book, but really all about the French esoteric system in regard to the major arcana. And this uses the Oswald Wirth cards in black and white pictures. So this is definitely from the perspective of Oswald Wirth and the French esoteric system. So that's all I can really say about that book. It's a great book. I'll put the details below the video for people who are interested in any of those 4 books. But they are 4 Jungian books from different approaches and different perspectives. 2 of them in regard to tarot, 1 in regard to the shadow, and 1 in regard to the archetypes. And I'm pretty sure all of these would still be available, and I'll put some details below the video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.